Thank you ever so much for spending time to come to this session. We felt it was a really important topic to discuss. And although the event can't answer everything, what it's designed to do is to try to give people an insight from a lived perspective, but also to kind of raise questions and hopefully take the discussions further. So just to introduce Helen briefly, I'm sure she'll give further details, but Helen Coy is Participation and Development Manager at the University of Birmingham Sports and Fitness. And she's going to reflect on her own experiences as she's only very recently being identified with autism, but she will explain that a bit further. So so we're going to begin the session, and as I say, it'll be an interview style presentation. If anybody has got any issues or any issues that are raised through the discussions, please let us know, and through the Q&A, and we'll endeavour to kind of respond to those concerns, or also signpost people to support resources as well. So hopefully enjoy the session, and thank you again, Helen, for joining us today. So just to start off, really, Helen, is just to give a bit of background into what your role involves, and a bit about yourself.
Lovely. Just checking you can hear me okay. I'm going to assume that Sue can hear. Yeah, perfect. So yeah, do let me know if at any point you can't, you're not able to access what I'm saying today, and yeah, we'll be able to sort it for you. Before I talk a bit about myself, which I will do for a lot, anyway, I'm just going to very quickly say these are pretty much the only things I've written down, just because it's so important at the beginning, just to say that my autistic experience isn't everyone's autistic experience, and it won't be the same for everybody. I definitely don't claim to be an expert. Like Sue mentioned, I'm newly diagnosed myself, only really this time last year, so there's been, I say, a lot to learn, but then also I probably did have plenty of time to learn more during lockdown. No, I didn't necessarily. So like Sue said, if you want to follow anything up, we can absolutely signpost you towards things. Just a quick thing about language. Firstly, I am incredibly sorry if at any point I say anything that I'll be doing my best basically to use language as kindly and as applicable to as many situations as possible, but that's my way of saying apologies if I mislabel either myself or anyone else at any point. I definitely am meaning to be inclusive throughout, so please take me with my intentions. I'm going to say a couple of terms throughout. So ASD is just acronym for autistic spectrum disorder. That doesn't necessarily mean, by the way, that I consider it to be a disorder, but you know, there you go, there's a debate already. Neurodivergent would just be a way of saying that someone diversifies from someone who is neurotypical, which again, big air quotes, is just a different way of saying normal. So there you go. I'll be saying, if you're very new to discussions of anything like this, I'll be saying neurotypical instead of normal, because what is normal? And then also Asperger's might be something that gets mentioned, or you might have questions about how that ties in with ASD. It's not necessarily something I'll massively discuss today, but can be and has traditionally been considered part of the autistic spectrum disorder. Things I might say that might resonate with people who might be neurodivergent, who might consider themselves neurotypical, or having a disability of any kind, or those who've struggled to maintain good mental health, either in their childhood or in their adult lives. So there might be things that I'm going to chat about that you're like, yeah, that sounds like me, but it's not to insinuate anything. It's just a really, hopefully, helpful chat for everyone. So that was a good introduction, wasn't it? I'm Helen and I talk too much. So a bit about my actual background. I did my undergrad at University of Birmingham, 2006 to 2009. I know. And then I also did my master's, and I did 2 years of a PhD as well. Then I worked in between them as well. So they were all in medieval history. And yes, now I work in sport. And I mainly came at that angle via sort of the fitness. So like I teach group fitness classes as well, which I do love very much. So my background is very diverse in the way I've come at things, but yes, it's very lovely that I've got to stay a part of the University of Birmingham for so long. That probably answers the first question. So
that's great, Helen. So the next question. So why do you think it can be hard for autistic people to thrive in a neurotypical world?
Yeah, great question. And one of the reasons why I said all the things I said at the beginning, because again, my experience is not everybody's. It depends. I was really lucky at school in the sense that one of the things that I can do is through aggressively learned behaviour, I'm okay at the interacting, I'm okay at the socialising, and that can be something that can be really difficult for autistic people, or to know when and how interactions are, like which interactions are appropriate and when. So other people I've known, that's been one of their most difficult things. The thing that I've learned, and it's just gotten more and more as I've gotten older, is how tired things make me. So even though there might be lots of perceptions about what an autistic person may or may not come across like, I would say by and large I can seem to be able to do most things, but a lot of the things make me tired. So my glasses are a big thing. They're tinted rather than sunglasses, and I find generally artificial light or sunlight, most light tends to just knacker my eyes, brain. So there's got a bit of a sort of processing disorder, I guess, between my eyes and my brain, and it's not necessarily autism itself, but definitely sensory overload can be a really common theme. If I'm feeling really tired anyway, and I've done a lot of things either in a particular day or week, noise as well, I'm very susceptible to migraines, but both the glasses and the sound help. So I've sort of answered the question from both my perspective, but also some of the things that people might run into. Oh, Sue, you've just remuted yourself. Sorry, my love. I heard you at the beginning of
Perils of it all. So what actually, you said at the beginning that you were diagnosed fairly late. So what actually led you to this diagnosis?
Loads of things. So I was diagnosed last year, and I'm 33 now, nearly 34. Very excited about my birthday. There was a few things going on. I struggled with aspects of my mental health throughout my 20s, definitely, and was one of the reasons for not completing the PhD part. So and I'm still on antidepressants now, which just help me with perspective and not overthinking things. And I think a big part of, now that I know a lot more about how my autism affects me, it's almost like, the way I describe it, and this kind of answers a bit the second question that you asked, kind of going back to it, it's almost like you might find as an autistic person, you're either hyper aware or under aware of certain things. And I think it's also, all my things are just almost set to maximum all the time. So empathy is a really interesting one. Some people might find they struggle to interpret people's like faces and emotions and tones. I say struggle with it, but I suppose I'm like so focused on making sure that I understand what it is, I'm on hyper. So in terms of like making sure I understand all these. So I think this kind of leads me to being more tired, noticing this. It's not something my mum works in, worked until she retired recently in an additional supports department for a sixth form college. And autism wasn't even anything she thought about from my perspective until she worked with more and more students. And she was the one that first suggested I could get my eyes tested in case this would help me as well. And it was almost until she looked into it a bit more. And my sister as well had a diagnosis. And it wasn't until both of them were doing some research that it almost like made sense to look into it even though no one had ever considered it for me, including myself. And almost it just helped to explain a lot of the bits and pieces of things that I was finding difficult in day-to-day life. I mean, I'm still, you know, unpicking what's my personality, what's autism, how and when they're interacting. So it has been fascinating, but that's why I pursued it, really, in case it would give me, almost give me like a helpful like toolkit, or like, you know, more coping mechanisms. You know, I'm already old. I've, you know, found lots of coping mechanisms for lots of the things that I'm not very good at. But yeah, so that was why, really, in case there was, in case it could help me to succeed, survive even better, I suppose.
And this is a sub question from that Helen, that just came to mind. So do you find that the label for you, in your experience, has been a positive thing or not?
For me personally, yes, definitely. Again, everyone's got like different associations with words or associations with labels. I'm quite like, I enjoy embracing things. I'm a very loud, open person anyway. Like, I'm also a very excited and active member of the LGBT community, and I enjoy saying that too. So it's kind of like in the same thing. Like with this talk, you know, I'm very happy for it to be shared, be talked about, you know, and I think, yeah, for me, it was a positive thing because it made a lot of sense. And I guess because of all the things I've ever worked with in UB sport as well, it's always been around sort of inclusion, making sure that all of our like activities and the things that we try and do are as inclusive as possible. So it was almost like I don't know, it was nice. It both made sense to me, and yeah, it was like, oh good, I almost feel like I've got the ownership to be able to talk about this and explore this further, but whilst knowing that, again, I know I'm not the same as anyone else.
Yes, that's brilliant there. And for anyone in the audience considering pursuing an adult diagnosis, are there any helpful things that you can think of that would you know, will help them on the process?
Yeah, there's some good general tips. This is absolutely something where if anyone's got any follow-up questions, this is definitely a good time for the Q&A. But in terms of a bit of background, adult diagnoses, I went via my GP to be referred. Referral process takes a really long time. There was an initial questionnaire, and this was before COVID. COVID kind of got in the way anyway, but the NHS amazingly outsourced their diagnosis process to a specialist company who already were doing stuff online. And again, some people prefer being in person, so I enjoy online things. So it was great for me. The actual it took about a year from my initial questionnaire referral to then the actual. There were some online, basically interviews, for want of a better term, but then like exercises I did, questions that I asked. There were 2 sessions with just me and the specialist, and then one with me and my mum as well, which was great. I mean, again, you don't have to have someone who's known you at childhood involved. They suggest it because it can be helpful for the diagnosis process, but they can do it without. So if you don't have either great relationships with family, or you're not ready to share or anything like that, it doesn't have to involve a member of your family or even a friend. Yeah, I found it really helpful anyway. So my mum had some hilarious stories and things that we've always laughed about and just thought were Helen quirks. So yeah, and then it was quite quick, actually. I got the diagnosis only like 2 weeks or something after the sort of 3 interview things happened. I think the longest one was, I think it was between 2 and maybe 2 up to 3 hours, I think the first one, but I don't think we used all the time. So yeah, obviously you can pursue things privately as well. And it's worth noting that self-diagnosis is absolutely a thing. I pursued it because I wanted. You asked a great question, Sue, in terms of like, how do you feel about the label? I pursued it because actually I was like, I want to check I'm not a fraud. I seem to meet this criteria, but I also because there's so many things that I do naturally that people would go, because of perceptions of what autism is, particularly, we'll come on to this, but autism in women, what that might look like. I was like, I think I want this diagnosis to check, please. So yeah, it can also be very much a self-diagnosis. Like, if you feel you fit the criteria, there is absolutely no reason why that can't be something that you engage with.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And so what do you think have been your biggest challenges that you've faced as an autistic person? And I just think in terms of either pre or post diagnosis.
So, I mean, it's helpfully kind of touched on them. Pre-diagnosis, definitely getting tired and not understanding why. Again, like, we all get tired. This is not a thing, and there's so many things as well within my experience that make me tired that also apply to everybody, neurotypical, neurodivergent, or otherwise. You know, if we get to the point where we've spoken to people a lot in a day, we probably want to sit down and in a dark room and not talk to anybody else, you know, and it's not necessarily an autistic thing, but I'd say the sensory stuff makes a really big difference. Understanding why sometimes I just need to be away from like light and noise. Like I kind of mentioned at the beginning, I'd already developed a lot of coping mechanisms anyway, and I used to, because of mentioning I'm sort of hyper on some sort of scale, so I can get hyper empathetic, which I don't think is a bad thing, but it does mean, like lots of people as well, probably in their 20s, you fall into the trap of saying yes to a lot of things. And when I've got energy, I've got loads. So saying yes to lots of things, but then not wanting to back out of things because you might let that person down, but then also knowing that if you do too many things, it'll have a knock-on effect onto the other things you care about. And I would say, weirdly, lockdown kind of really helped me, because it took away lots of things, and it just made me go, what are my favorite things to do? How do I best decompartmentalize? And, you know, like, I love my job and I want to be able to give my best in my job, and like, you know, and I have adopted a dog, and, you know, and interestingly, it tells me a lot, you know, again, mentioning challenges pre-diagnosis, relationships, not so much, sort of friendships. There's a lot to be said for, like, because of the saying yes to lots of things and not recognizing where I might then struggle with energy. I've had some very patient past partners. I'm very lucky to still have some of them as friends. But almost that I'll put energy into things and then almost sometimes have none left for, like, you know, the nice people that are like, you know, have given me a lot. And it's not deliberate. I'm not being a terrible person, but, like, you know, definitely with my lovely partner, who is excellent. I'm so pleased that I'm at this point of my life. And I think the diagnosis being helpful in terms of understanding even more what I can and can't give, but also taking ownership of what to not do, so that I can invest my energy in the things that really matter to me. So, and that's been, I mean, I feel like that's just a learning curve for anyone in life, and probably isn't that much to do with the autism, but is an aspect of it, definitely. So yeah, I'd say those things for me have been my biggest.
Yeah. And so now just moving on to kind of adjustments that you've felt that have been helpful, and I'm, you know, thinking those not just in terms of your kind of academic career or your job, but kind of socially, personally, and in the workplace, and whether there's any kind of common themes or not within that.
Yeah, that's a really big one. So definitely since my diagnosis as well, I've talked about it lots with my, like, colleagues. So I'm one of, like, 8 heads of department within EB Sport, one branch of it, so the sort of operational side. And I mean, one of the big things is lights. Like, notice, like, I used to just Monday afternoon is the heads of department meeting, and I like my colleagues and I don't dislike the actual meeting, but I used to come out just absolutely shattered. And it's still the case, but at least I kind of get why the artificial light is, like, draining, but my colleagues are really supportive about, like, we dim the lights, so that makes a huge difference. And, you know, there was definitely on Monday, I was like, I almost feel like I might be better doing this online, and then actually felt okay. But it's almost like that knowing. So I think that's one thing that transcends all the areas, you know, personal, social, work. I'd already kind of, me and my friends talk about spoons a lot, and that came from one of my friends who hilariously works for an ASD charity in Birmingham. So she told me the anecdote, and I use it all the time now. Almost like imagining you start each day with a certain amount of emotional energy, let's say, and the spoons is just the word for like how many you've got. So say you start each day with 10, it might be that I know I'm starting on a low spoons day. So it might take all of the energy I have to literally get out of the house and get dressed sometimes. And then I'm like, so my team are great, like so supportive. And sometimes I'm like, guys, today I will just be staying in my office and, you know, replying to emails, but let me know if something's on fire. And then some days I'm like, I've got all my spoons. So if you've got anything hard or complicated or that needs me to go for it, today's a great day. And I'd say that also goes with all my like friendships as well. Like my friends would definitely understand if we'd made a plan. And this is one of the things I used to really struggle with. If I'd made a plan, I didn't want to let the person down. But if I'm tired already, I'll really struggle to get going, and then I'll be late. So then the person's also mad at me that I'm late, and I'm not, and then I'll be like, and I'm not on form. Oh God. So almost that planning, trying to call it earlier if I think I can't manage something, and being honest about why. Like I've never struggled to be not be honest, but just to be kinder to myself about why I can't do something. And that's been a big transition for me. And that, again, that goes across all the areas, you know, that personal relationship with myself as well, like not being so hard on myself when I can't do things. That's definitely been a good relief, I think.
Yeah. And just following on from that, Helen, just that do you feel that you're able to articulate your kind of, you know, that about the lights and things like that to colleagues that you don't know? How do you, is there a difference, or do you actually just sit there and just think these lights are really problematic, or how do you feel empowered now to actually say, guys, do you think we could dim the lights?
The latter, definitely. I think pre-diagnosis, even though I'm, again, quite a confident person, but I also then I'm struggling with not wanting to inconvenience others. So almost that, but almost by having, like, you know, and I've got my sunflower lanyard and everything. So it's almost like which, you know, it gives you I feel okay to ask for this. And I feel like if someone wants, and I don't mind explaining why, like that, you know, but also that's not expected, you know, and most people might not want to explain why, but be comfortable to ask for a thing. So yeah, I would feel comfortable saying it with colleagues now, whereas like before the diagnosis, I think almost, yeah, me having the labels helped me to feel like I'm not inconveniencing others. This is a thing.
Yeah.
But not that anyone should feel that they can't ask for something. Like, I mean, why are electric lights so bright? It's definitely not just me. Like, the more I talk about it, everyone's like, yeah, no, why are they so bright? Why has everyone got them set to maximum? People, like, most of them can dim a bit. Don't to your eyes. Anyway, that's my tip.
And then there have been several other questions, but this one's kind of linked, so I'm not missing the other questions. But somebody's asked, are you able to work full time, or do you work part time due to energy levels and tiredness?
Excellent question. Excellent question. So personally, I work full time. This kind of brings me back to trying to do all of the things. I both work full time and I work as an instructor as well. So I know. This is why I would, yeah, my poor dog. It's a good, so I've dropped the amount of classes I do. This was one of the things I did in lockdown anyway. So I did some teaching from home, like virtually, which was when I adopted my dog first. And I used to teach about 8 to 9 classes a week. Yeah, I know. You listen, I know it sounds ridiculous. And that was on top of my normal job. And I mean, that's a lot for any human. About three or four of them would be on a Saturday, so on a day where I didn't normally work. But the point of like the job within UB Sport anyway, like my job anyway, it can be 9 to 5, but some days it might mean like working later or being in at weekends, or it's kind of business need. So I dropped down the number of classes, but I'll be completely honest and say that my manager, who has been very supportive, like, you know, she discussed this with me as well, in terms of like, you know, and it was a whole person discussion, you know, but at the time when, you know, she wasn't going like, you can't do your job. She was just going, look at all the things, you know, you know, it was a discussion, and this was pre-diagnosis, so we didn't even really know what we were working with. But because I loved that part, and the problem is it does feed into my normal job, because I also, within the department, we manage all the like fitness stuff. So anyway, I really struggled to give it up. And one of the other autistic things, not always, but can be a special interest. I am definitely a special interest person. If I've decided I love a thing, I love a thing, and I will do everything that is with the thing. And fitness was definitely that for me. Whereas hilariously, I'd say like I still love teaching, but now I've dropped down to more like, I only do 4 regular classes spread out throughout the week now. And I would say like my priority is very much hanging out with my dog and my girlfriend as much as possible. That is my like, and that's how I chill. So that noticing what gives energy and takes away. And I think classes were always a bit of a gamble. Like you can get classes that absolutely give you energy. And then on some days, if I'm low on spoons, they can take away, which then has an effect on everything else. So it's a very long answer, I'm sorry, to your question of full or part-time. I was a bit worried coming back after the pandemic. I would say I adjusted really well to working from home and noticed how much energy I had, and all the conversations from people around going, I can't wait to get back in person, and oh, won't it be nice when things are normal again? Absolutely. Like, I say scared me, but it just made me realize actually, I suppose, how different I am. And I suppose because I am quite an extroverted person, people would very much expect me to feel very differently about that. And actually I really, yeah, probably would describe scared as the main emotion to like transitioning back to in person and doing meetings. And I just realized like I can do eye contact, I can do interpretation of tone, I can do these things, but I much prefer not to have to do it turns out. Yeah. So yeah, I originally thought I was going to need to do more hybrid working, like some from home, some in person, but actually I've gone back to doing it all. But the main thing is I've got my own office now, rather than being in the main office with everybody else and I used to work with earplugs in anyway, even though I sat with my team, but that helps. Sorry, very long answer. But
no, that's fine. So what advice, Helen, would you give to anyone who is autistic or feels they may be neurodivergent when starting out in their careers?
Oh yeah, this is a really good question. So I'll just give him a quick shout out. Pete, who was poorly saying couldn't make it, he supported loads with sorting out of this event, and he, you know, wanted to make sure this was one of the questions. It's a great one. I suppose the biggest thing is always be honest with your line managers, and this goes for anyone. It doesn't matter whether you think you're neurodivergent or not, no, you're completely neurotypical or feel that you are. It's always good to be really honest about what you need from your day-to-day work, both your working patterns and how you might get the most out of like one-to-ones, how you want tasks given to you. You know, like sometimes I can process information so much better when it's written. I used to, you know, as I've moved out of the main office, one of the main reasons was people would want to, you know, stop by, quickly drop a task on you and move on. And absolutely, it makes sense to do this. I am awful. If I'm in the middle of something and someone tries to give me something new, I'm like, what? Like, I can't, some days, great at it. And this is the problem by having different days, because, you know, you might be fine. And then people are like, oh, she's fine with getting information. So being really clear about how you best process information, how you work best across the board. And if you're new in your career, you might not know that either. Like, it wasn't until I started, I mean, we kind of come back to why the PhD didn't suit me, even though I thought it would. So the master's, great, very tunnel vision, just doing this one thing. PhD, it was like, anytime I wasn't doing my research, I just was like, but I could be doing my research. But then I would procrastinate terribly, and there wasn't enough variety for me. So I need there to be variety, short-term goals, like just this one massive goal at the end of 4 years was like, even though I loved what I was doing. And my supervisor, again, was so helpful in terms of small incremental goals, but my brain just couldn't break out of the fact that it's this huge, massive project that ultimately I have to deliver. So I think being honest with yourself about what you like in your day-to-day, what things you're going to find difficult, talking to managers about how, I mean, again, for people starting their careers, I mean, I know we're coming out of a difficult time economically, and it might be like, oh my God, I just want any job, which is a great attitude. Take anything, because you don't know until you try what you will and won't like. How are you supposed to know how you work best? Do anything. But by that same token, like, as you're interviewing, remember that you're also interviewing the people on the panel, and pay attention to what they're like. And if you can imagine working with those actual humans, I think that's such a big thing, like, it's not that you don't want them to want you, you do, but ask really honest questions about like the workspace and what the expectations will be like in general. And that's not a bad thing. As I recruit a lot, and I really enjoy questions from people that are engaged enough about the role that they're applying for to ask insightful questions about what that actually will look like. And that shows me that they're actually really interested in it and engaged with it. And it also tells me whether or not I can work with them. So when I recruited like my lovely Group X coordinator, Sophie, it was just that thing of going, like, I knew our personalities would be compatible. We're different and we approach things in different ways, but there's like similar values. We care in the same way, and the fact that we approach things differently is perfect, because if everyone approached like organization the way I do, nothing would probably happen. So yeah, that's my tip for starting.
That's brilliant. And what do you wish more people knew about autism?
Yeah, great one. Again, this came from like Pete and you, I think, as well, Susan. You said how important this one was, which is I think I touched on it slightly earlier, that how different it can look, both in different people and in different gender identities as well. So if you're assigned female at birth, it can manifest itself very differently. So, and again, like, even I did check my lovely sister, didn't mind me mentioning her. Both mine and my sister's experience at school was very, very different. And the differences in things in our school reports are fascinating. And it's almost like, not only do I wish what I know, but just, what everyone knew. I wish, I don't know, obviously that it can be a lovely thing as well. Obviously, I'd say that.
Yes.
But I'd say that it can look so different, that it can mean that people can be good at talking. It can mean that people can, not just good at certain specific things, but it can, I mean, I've always been like, I always got joked about being crazy or weird or whatever, and it never bothered me. Like, this is fine, but definitely not in a horrible way. But it's that very outgoing trait that doesn't have to, again, what is the autism and what is my personality? But I think the big thing as well, like, not dismissing someone as well if they ever want to speak to you about thoughts or feelings that they might have any kind of neurodivergence. So when I did originally, a few years ago, when my mum first said, I think it might be worth you looking into this, I remember mentioning it to somebody, and they meant it in the loveliest possible way. And they went, "You're not autistic." And they weren't being rude. They were just like, but it was because it doesn't present in a way that they expected it to. And again, I'm no expert, but there are some really interesting articles on how women can mask their neurodivergence sometimes better than how males traditionally present with it. Again, there's a lot of, you know, generic comments, but I mean this in the, you know, there's still so much research that's being done about it. But again, you might get the tired thing, women can pretend sometimes, but again, not all of us, eh?
Yeah. So again, just to recap, so not making assumptions, talking to the person, and just recognizing that people's experiences can be very different. But do you think, I mean, just very briefly, do you think that the fact that you were challenged back before you diagnosed, do people still say that to you?
No, I mean, no one goes now like, you're not.
Yeah.
Probably because, you know, they're like probably terrified of a lawsuit or something.
Yeah.
But good. No, no, I would not sue him.
Yeah.
But no, I think you're absolutely right. You know, it was when I was expressing it as this is a potential was different. You know, it's not like anyone's gone, no, you're absolutely right. I definitely was a bit worried about, like I mentioned, like a sort of an imposter syndrome or something. But no, not like I've had my diagnosis and anyone's gone, you can't wear that lanyard, or stop pretending to be autistic, or something. So that has been reassuring.
And then just the last question, because I know there's quite a lot of questions that are coming up and I want time for you to be able to answer those. So what do you like most? I mean, I think you've covered this, but most about being autistic?
I love that it just helps me to understand who I am more than anything. Like I said, you know, I see it as a positive thing. I mean, I suppose I've never really been like yay, everything the same. Conformity is not really my bag. So for me, I suppose the best thing is it gives me, assuming that the hyper empathy thing again is somehow linked, like, and isn't just, you know, is probably the certain things that will be tweaked up or down as a result of the autism. Like, I'd like to think I'd have been a kind and caring person regardless, but I would say if someone asked me like, what is the thing that I like about myself, I'm not saying I get it right all the time, but trying to do right by others and caring about people. And, you know, I've gotten better since I knew about the autism of also taking care of myself at the same time. So almost like it's the interaction between the two, because you can't take good care of other people if you're, you know, on the floor yourself. So yeah, my favorite thing is that I mean, the tunnel vision thing can be both a blessing and sometimes a curse. But again, knowing where the roots are coming from, it helps me to see it for what it is better, and, you know, get a bit better at looking side to side sometimes. So yeah, it comes with some lovely gifts.
And that's brilliant, Helen. So I'm just going to go through some of the questions, because there's quite a lot of questions. Some of them we might have covered, but I'm just going to, you know, try and, you know, give everybody a voice. Yeah. So what are the benefits of sport for you and your neurodiverse symptoms? And in the opposite way, what do you think the benefits of your neurodiverse systems are in the sporting context?
Oh, that is such an exciting question. I'm literally, I mean, I've just pulled it up because I'm just going to reread it.
Yeah.
Benefits of sport for you in the opposite way. Oh, so cool. Okay, wow, I love this. Okay, benefits for me. So it started out where I would do fitness. So, you know, I'm pleased to get the opportunity to just mention this bit, actually, because I started doing fitness classes really when I was in my PhD, and I was like, again, this is the tunnel vision thing. I was really struggling to see a world outside the PhD, and the fitness stuff gave me something where I could do that for like an hour, feel successful, like I'd managed to, say, leave the house or get dressed or something. It also, doing the fitness stuff, maybe eat better, in like, I don't mean even, it doesn't even have to be healthy or whatever. It just made me fuel myself better so that I could do that better and either, like, you know, recover or have enough energy to do it. So at a time in my life where, you know, I was struggling to see out of a particular thing. And like I say, that was when my depression was terrible as well. It just gave me a really positive focus. And the reason why I became an instructor myself was so that I could hopefully do that for others, because it was like I'd go to a class and like I made friends with lots of the instructors and they were all so nice, and so that was kind of me. In terms of like the neurodiversity, I've always found somehow at UB Sport, I don't think even like, obviously it's not even necessarily that all the instructors get the training like of how to, be with different people, but I suppose now that I'm an instructor, it gets hammered into you, as it should, that you'll have so many different people that come through the doors with different goals. They'll need different things throughout the coaching, throughout the class. So like there'll be people that want to get better at technique and want to know exactly what they're doing and want the structure. There's people who just want to have a good time and switch off and enjoy the music. So my classes have literally got going like technique, tell them what they're doing, make some jokes, now be quiet so they can enjoy the music, boom, boom, boom. So I think by feeling accepted myself, like one of the first classes I came, I didn't know what I was supposed to wear, and like I turned up in like all the wrong kit, and one of the instructors just made it awesome for me. She didn't make me feel stupid, she didn't make me think I'd like misunderstood, and that can be again for anybody. So I'll try and do the second part of the question opposite way. What do you think the benefits? I would say, again, so sporting is really interesting. I will touch on the fact that I'm terrible at actual sport. So this is a whole other thing that I won't spend too long on, but I can't track where a teammate might be, an opposition person might be, and where a ball might go. And I'm moving. I can't do it. It's just too much. I'm not very coordinated. However, and we come back to the over empathy. Personally, I panic about letting down teammates a lot. So I did play rugby briefly, and mainly that was because everyone was so lovely, and like you can be good, you can be crap, but you can join in. And again, with Sophie the other week, we played like walking netball, and it's the first time I genuinely feel like I've consistently been able to pass and work with somebody and signal where we were going, and it was almost because I feel safe and comfortable with that person. So in terms of sports, I find it difficult, and I wish I'd known that sooner, because maybe I could have been able to do more team sport. I was more an independent, like, swimming or that kind of thing, something you do on your own, because then I didn't have to, trip on anyone up accidentally. In terms of, I kind of covered it as a fitness instructor, I would say, again, all the things that I would look for from a class, I always try and give to others. So again, I'm not saying I did it perfectly, but I hope I've answered the question sort of. It was a great question.
And then I'm just trying to get the rest of the questions up. I don't know if you can. Have you had any misunderstandings with your friends and colleagues, and did people misread your intentions sometimes?
Great question. So I would say not necessarily that I'm the misreader. Sometimes if I'm very tired, thank you so much. I would say sometimes if I'm really tired, I more need to say to people, and this is why it's good to always approach things and be really open and honest. I'm like, see, you've just told me some words. Tell me them again and just say exactly what you want me to do. Because like I say, I can do the nuance and stuff, but it's like my brain needs to strip everything back and down to figure out what they want. So a lot of the time I'm very motivated by doing what people want. So if they just tell me what they want off the bat, that saves me a lot of time and energy trying to work it out. So that's, I would say I'm quite good at understanding what other people want, but if I don't get it, I do ask them to repeat themselves and just be extra clear. Really interesting. You guys have got great questions. I'd say the biggest thing, do people misread your intentions sometimes? I think one of the hardest things for me sometimes is because of, if in the past I've done a lot or do too much, and then if I get a bit tunnel visagey, I think the thing, and we've talked, I love my mum, she's amazing, we're very close, she's fantastic, she's like my best bud. I think the thing, and this is not mean in a horrible way, way before the diagnosis, I think one of the things that she ever said that hurt me the most was, she didn't call me selfish, but she said you can be very self-centered sometimes. And I just remember being absolutely like crushed, because I was like, this is the one thing I try so hard not to be. And it's definitely come up in relationships. So I mentioned, you know, earlier on with like, and this is why, like with my current partner, I mean, she's sick of me telling her how excellent she is. Like I do it all the time. And like, you know, but it comes from an experience of like, not almost like, I want the people to know, if I care about them, I want them to know I care about them, especially because I always know that there's going to be sometimes I'm not going to get it right, and also to encourage them to tell me when I'm not getting it right as well, so that I can do better. And this isn't in a doormat way, this is just in a, if you're in a relationship, I think that's it, if you've got a more informal relationship, the closer you are, all those barriers go down. So it's almost like, I don't mean I'm not trying, it just means that I probably won't make my face react as much, I won't do the eye contact as much, because I just kind of, I'm comfortable with somebody, so I'm not, you know, trying to look engaged all the time. It doesn't mean I'm not. So it's a really good question. I would say I've accidentally hurt people in the past, but I'm very aware of it now, and like the better ways of, you know, checking in. Some of it is definitely learned behavior, like almost like at some points I'll go, I need to check on this other like you just go, you've talked for a really long time, Helen, ask them if they're okay. So yeah, no, great question, thank you.
And then just, sorry, I don't know if you can see them, Helen, I'm just trying to go out.
So good. The next one, oh amazing, I mean I can read it out if you want, the one that starts, I'm autistic.
Oh yes, that's
I'll read it out if you want. I'm autistic. I have my diagnosis appointment soon. Yay, congratulations. And I'm really worried about disclosing, not disclosing once I start work. I'm starting my teacher training soon, and I'm worried about my ability to teach, competency being questioned, especially by colleagues due to the stigma around autism. Do you have any advice, experiences around this, please? I mean, absolutely happy to talk more about this. I would say first and foremost, I would 1000% call it like, I would call it a benefit rather than, if anything, if people aren't so ridiculously hyper aware of neurodivergence in the school place, there is no better place. Like, you know, one of the questions earlier, it did make me go, if more school teachers were aware of how different things could present, like more people would be enabled to have more prosperous careers and all of these things. So it takes a lot to be bold and say the thing, but one, they absolutely, from a law perspective, can't discriminate against you. So that's good to be aware of. It's up to you, obviously, how much you talk about it. I would talk about it in an empowering way as much as possible, definitely with your line manager. It's up to you, obviously, whether you want to talk to other colleagues. It depends about, and you say about starting teacher training soon. I would talk about it personally. I think the more that you can, it will change people's opinions of what someone with autism can do, and that there is no more, like, again, empowering and inspirational thing you could do for then the children you will go on to teach, like to have their teacher outwardly say, like, I'm teaching you and I'm great at this and I care about you and I'm autistic, and that says like so much to any of them, but to go on into the world and then have other interactions with other people. So I don't know how helpful that is. I would just say no one has ever been, I've tried so hard not to swear at all throughout this time. No one has ever been mean to me as a result of the autism thing. I realise that I'm very lucky and I work in a university environment that is very committed to inclusivity, and I have seen the benefit of that, and I'm sure it would not be the same in all workplaces. However, in somewhere like the school world, I feel like you're in a good place, basically. I mean, if you ever want to get in touch, I'll put my email address in the chat and stuff at the end in case you want to like follow it up or have any more questions, but absolutely golden, you should be good.
I'll just add just to that if you are in school as well, whether you're doing the teacher training or you're actually, you know, working in the school, you know, for some people having those discussions might lead to reasonable adjustments, which might be useful to you. So it's, again, thinking about at what point you disclose and thinking about reasonable adjustments and what those might look like in your situation. But that's great. And so the next question, because I'm just really short of time, sorry.
No.
So based on your experience, what are the most common neurodiversity disabilities? And can I get a list of disabilities you know? So I don't know if you want to.
Helpful, because I can't answer this one, and I'll be very open about it. So the shortest way is, I'd say probably Sue's.
Yes, so we can get that sorted and sent out. So that'd be no problem. Then the next question, I suspect my child has autism. How to seek help, and would it be through the GP for a child?
That's a great question. I mean, again, I'm probably not the expert on this part, but what do you think, Sue? Would you say GP is still the best way if you're a child, or going through this?
I think it just depends on different situations, because I think the school route is quite a long and hard route and takes quite a lot of battling to get a child through the school system with a diagnosis. But I would say that, it's probably a two-pronged approach, and I'd actually go potentially to the GP first. And just take it from there. But we have got some links to some sources of support as well, so it might be worth contacting, because the resources are usually, I was saying to this Helen at the beginning, for children are very supportive and very kind of I suppose the world is better equipped for the kind of child diagnosis. So I think, if you look at the sources of support, and if you feel that we still haven't answered your question, then do get back to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then what would you say is the biggest challenge to a person on the spectrum as an NT?
I love this, you guys, honestly. I would say biggest challenge. I mean, again, I could just line up. I should have queued up all the past people I've dated to talk through it. And I might get muddled in terms of like which way round. So I'll say a bit. I'd say, okay, right. I'll just make sure I'm answering it the right way around. The biggest challenge of the day. Okay. It depends how comfortable they are with themselves and talking about what their needs are. So, and that would probably just go for all humans, whether they're neurodivergent or otherwise. So, and again, this is where it is really difficult for me to speak for others, because there might be people who would say, struggle to talk about their emotions. I talk about my emotions all of the time. I'm more like, there's no lying, there's no filters, blah, blah, this is how I feel. Like, I was lucky enough to get with my partner because I messaged her and told her, but she could do whatever she liked with that information. So again, I'm not all people. You might get a lot of openness, you might get the opposite, you might get people who are or aren't comfortable talking with their emotions. I'd say the biggest thing, and again, transcends to all relationships, getting to know them and asking what they need from communication. Again, I cannot stress that probably enough in all relationships. How does your communication work? What works for you? I think the funniest thing is, though, very, very quickly before we do the last question, apparently lots of women do the thing where they say one thing and mean another. This has always been hilarious to me. I just don't get this. This makes no sense. So apparently that's the thing. So it's always good to check with a partner whether they like doing it.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's again just reinforcing, moving away from kind of stereotypes and making assumptions, asking the person rather than making assumptions. And then just the last question, Helen, because I'm just conscious of the time. I'm hoping to start my PhD next year. What would you say? Would you say there is anything looking back you think would have helped you throughout your 2 years?
Oh yeah, I read this one, so I knew this one was coming up. Thank you. Probably the really short answer for me personally is no. I've now learned that this was not the right path for me, but that's not because there weren't things that could have been put in place to support me. But I would have said I was so lucky. I was in Cal, and oh gosh, there's people who I'm still in touch with now. It was such a supportive department. I mean, my supervisor was brilliant. It was like me and my best friend Beth, who's gone on to become a lecturer at the University of Queensland. We both, it was his first, like we were his first two real like full-time PhD students. I would say I don't feel at the time, I mean, this was like probably, well, nearly 10 years ago that I started the PhD. So I wouldn't say there was as much training as possibly there could be from the supervisor perspective, but that's not because it's very hard to describe. I mean, we could talk about how academics don't have enough time or support to do any of their jobs, and we all know this to be very much true, but that's a whole different topic. I would just say, for me personally, I've learned I need more variety in my day-to-day, that the PhD and probably a career long-term in academia wouldn't have done for me. And because of my tunnel vision tendencies, if I'd have become an academic, I'm not sure I would have ever looked up from the thing I was doing, but also that I'm very weird about deadlines, like in terms of they scare me, yet I don't manage to accomplish them either. So it's not like fear of a deadline used to be able to get me to do it, and now it like paralyzes me. And that would have been my life as an academic, like doing papers, you know, getting presentations ready. So the short answer I'd probably say is similar to lots of the other things. The thing that probably would have helped me, if I had been able to carve it up into small, achievable, bite-sized chunks. That's for me. But I genuinely don't think there was ever a way that my brain would have been able to do that. Like, I know myself well enough now, and I did the leave of absence first before withdrawing completely to give me time. And then I went back into the working world and went, no, this suits me better. I need a thing that I do. I work really hard, but then I leave. I mean, I struggle switching off from my current job as it is. So feel free to email me if you think I haven't really covered that one. And if you've got more specific questions about just the PhD process, regardless, because if you're starting it, you might be like, oh, I don't know what actually my day-to-day would look like. It depends on the, I almost think if I'd have done, sorry, I will shut up in a minute. If I'd have done a science-based topic, it would have given me a much better chance, because say if I was doing like labs or something, or I was physically, you know, or say I was doing, you know, testing and things with like more specific outcomes. History was almost like so open interpretation, and I wanted to know all of the information and assimilate all of the information. And it was just too much. Whereas I think somehow science-based and narrower, I mean, my supervisor was brilliant. He kept trying to get me to narrow it. And I was like, but I can't, I want to answer all of these things. So there you go, good tip, narrow the topic down, be really specific, use evidence that you can definitely get at. Don't pick sources in Latin if you don't know Latin.
That's brilliant, Helen. So thank you so much. I'm just conscious of the time, but thank you to Helen for sharing her experience with you and giving an insight into kind of her world. And also thank you to you as participants for making the time to come and join, and to Sandev and to Erin, who've been monitoring the chat. And we will get back to you if you've got any questions that we haven't answered, and the things like the lists. So we'll and the session is being recorded, so again it's available, and you know, Helen's said she's willing to, you know, to be shared, so that's great. So thank you ever so much for everybody. Right, bye.
Thanks very much, everyone. Hope you have lovely afternoons and enjoy the rest of UAB Festival.